Alright guys, MTech Guy here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the little one series, the E87 130i. Now I took this car in for its annual inspection just recently, or a WAF as we call it here in New Zealand, a warrant of fitness, and it actually failed. It passed on everything apart from the rear drive shaft rubber coupling. Now these cars have one of these rubber couplings either end of the drive shaft, one where it connects to the gearbox and the other end where it connects to the differential. And it's a super common problem that rear one can start to fail on these cars. The other one can fail over time, but it's especially common for that rear one to fail. And what can happen over time, as with any rubber part, it'll start to harden, it'll start to crack, it'll just deteriorate over time, just like any rubber part. And eventually it will come apart if you leave it long enough. But of course you do not want that. Now this part's often referred to as the drive shaft rubber coupling, the drive shaft flex disc, or a guibo as it's often known as too. So what's the purpose of this rubber flex disc? Well, it's there to reduce drivetrain noise and vibration, all that power that's been transmitted from the engine through the gearbox, down the drive shaft and then into the differential and the rear wheels. It's just there to smooth everything out, remove the vibration, any shock, and just give that nice driving experience. So whenever you're under your car, it is worth checking it out for cracks. That's usually the obvious sign that it's deteriorating. So today we're going to run through the steps required to get your rear drive shaft rubber changed out. Now what I'd normally do with a job like this is pull the whole drive shaft right out and replace the front rubber coupling while I've got the opportunity, and the centre support bearing, because they can fail over a long period of time. But it's that rear rubber that normally fails way before the other two items, and to be honest, I just need to get this car certified. I want to get it back on the road. So today we're just going to focus solely on that rear drive shaft rubber coupling. Alright, let's take a look at the parts that we're going to need to get the job done. Alright, so here we have the new drive shaft rubber itself. Now I've gone for a Febby Bilstein branded one here, so I'd either go for this brand or a genuine BMW one, but the genuine ones are quite expensive in comparison to the Febby brand right here. But the main thing you want to be looking for is the SGF logo there, because that's the original equipment manufacturer. So we've got an OEM part here. You can see if you look closely where they've ground off the BMW logos there. So pretty much exactly the same as a genuine one. It's just going to cost you a lot less money. Now another part worth ordering at the same time when you order your rubber coupling is this centre support bushing here. Now this fits on the end of the drive shaft and it connects to the nose of the flange on the differential. Now chances are you're not going to have to replace this if your existing one's in serviceable condition, but it is worth having just in case once you get everything opened up. If your original one's all messed up, all worn out, chewed up inside, and the rubber's all coming apart and messed up, then you do want to look at replacing this. But this is a whole extra job entirely, because you ideally want to be removing the whole drive shaft itself to get a good go at replacing this. Now you probably can do it in position, but it is very tight and it is very difficult. It's just awkward because of the access, but like I say, it's unlikely that you're going to want to have to replace this if it's still looking in good condition, but it is worth having just in case. Alright, so let's take a look at the steps required to get your rear drive shaft rubber coupling changed out on the E87 1 Series. Alright, so first things first, we need to get the arse end of the car up in the air. Alright, so now that we've got access under the rear of the car, let's take a closer look. So this is the drive shaft rubber coupling that we're talking about, and if we take a closer look there, you can see it's got a few cracks in it. It's starting to show its age, which is pretty common. So to gain access to this, what we're going to do is just undo this 10mm bolt here and just fold this heat shield back slightly, just give it enough room to be able to flex out of the way so we can get our hands in here. There's a bit of an opening here that we can use there, and we're going to use a 16mm spanner on either side this nut and bolt to remove the bolts. So it's worth positioning each bolt in this position here, remove it, and then rotate the drive shaft via the rear wheels to the next one. If you are having a bit of trouble with it moving around, you can jump inside the car, put the handbrake on for each one, then take it off and re-rotate it. So it's worth just taking a mental note before you go any further at this stage as to which direction the bolts go through the rubber coupling there. And also, if you take a closer look, not sure if the camera will pick it up here, there are arrows at each bolting up portion of the rubber coupling. Now they'll be pointing towards the part that it's touching against. So of course this arrow is pointing towards the flange on the differential here, and then there'll be one on the edge there that points towards the drive shaft, so they're touching in opposite portions. Now if you get this wrong, what it can do is lead to drivetrain noise and vibration, so it is worth just having a good look at that. Take some photos if you need to, make a wee drawing, but just make sure you know how it all goes back together before you get too carried away. Alright, let's get this thing out of here. Alright, so heat shield bolt out first, 10mm. And then next up, the rubber coupling bolts themselves. We'll work our way around them. Now these bolts that hold the rubber coupling to the differential flange itself, they take a E12 Torx socket, and of course the head's on the back side there. So we'll move on to that one next. They're the ones that hold in the rubber coupling to the differential flange. That's what the prop shaft rubber coupling bolts look like. Wheel lock nut. Okay, so that's all the bolts removed now. So the next step is we just need to pry the drive shaft away from the disc itself to give us enough room just to wiggle it out of there. Now this can be quite a tricky wee job. It's probably the hardest part of the job sometimes, depending on how this rubber has become fused to the steel. So you might need to give it a few taps with a hammer. Just go gently, you don't want to damage the prop shaft in any way, but usually a pry bar does the trick. There we go, it's just a case of working around it gently. And then of course we've got the centre bushing sitting on the nose of the differential there, so we just need to push the drive shaft away just enough to clear that nose there. Is a tight squeeze. There we go. Now we've got the old one out of there. Alright, so at this stage, now that we've got the drive shaft rubber coupling removed, it is worth just inspecting your small centre bushing there. Now if this looks all damaged and chewed up inside, or the rubber's all messed up, you are going to have to look at replacing it. But to be able to do that successfully, you really need to remove the drive shaft itself. You probably could do it in position here if you drilled all this out, maybe cut the edge of this. You might be able to get it out of there and then knock the new one back in, but it's not ideal. You've not got a lot of room here, and that is a whole different job altogether, removing the drive shaft, because there's a lot of stuff to get out of the way. So it's kind of optional, this. Only really need to replace it if you really have to, but if it's looking okay, it'll probably last another rubber coupling in the meantime. Alright guys, so we've got the old one out of there now, so we'll just take this opportunity to have a closer look at it, and you can see got a number of cracks in between there. She's not looking very pretty. Over on the other side, a few cracks. It's coming apart there. Looks like this was the original one to the car. Genuine BMW one. It's got the logo there, got the part number there. And then of course we've got our new replacement one here. It's looking good to go. Alright, let's get this back in the car. Okay, so like I mentioned at the start of the video, before we go chucking this back in position, we're just going to make sure we identify these arrows on the edge of the rubber coupling and make sure we've got them pointing in the right direction. So they want to be pointing towards the section that they're bolting up against. So we've got this arrow here. We're going to put that up against the differential drive flange there, and just make note that they are extended out of the rubber either side, and they sit in these small recesses here, so it all locates nice and securely. So we'll chuck that in now. We're just going to grab hold of that drive shaft flange and try and locate it on the nose of the differential flange in the centre there, just so that bushing slides on. Should be able to pull that in by hand. There we go. A bit closer. Located on there. I think what we'll do next is just get this differential drive shaft bolt in with the E12 Torx head. We'll just get that held in position so it's not dropping out. And then what I might do is just put the two bolts in there on the drive shaft flange, just to draw that in on itself. There we go, now that's drawn that together nicely. So at this stage we're just going to do everything up sort of finger tight for now, and once we've got them all in, all finger tight, then we'll work our way around in a crisscross pattern to torque it all down. Right, that's them bolts all sort of just nipped up now, finger tight. So now what I'll do is just go around them all, give them a final torque, and then we'll reposition the heat shield there. there we go, that's the rubber drive shaft coupling back in. Now we can reposition the heat shield. And one thing worth doing, just have a good look at this heat shield, because we've been flexing it out of the way. You just want to make sure it's not touching the drive shaft or the flange here at all, and you don't want to be touching the exhaust either, because all that noise is going to get pretty annoying pretty quickly. So just make sure it's all seated correctly and you're not hitting against anything. Okay, so that's all back together. So next up we can drop the car back down on its wheels. Alright guys, so there we have it. That's how you go about changing out the rear drive shaft rubber coupling on your little one Series E87. Now like I say, ideally it is worth getting this changed out as part of a preventative maintenance job, where you're going to drop the whole drive shaft, change out the front rubber coupling, the centre support bearing and them centre alignment bushes at the same time. But you'll often find yourself in a similar situation to myself, where that rear drive shaft rubber coupling has failed way quicker than the other parts, and sometimes you just need to get stuck in, get the job done, and just focus on changing out what's required at the time, which I've done today. Okay, so if you found the video interesting or useful, don't forget to give it a like, and make sure you go and check out the rest of my YouTube channel for more BMW DIY videos. I'm MTech Guy, thanks a lot for watching.